Tavon Austin was a human highlight reel.
One of the most fire-igniting players to ever step foot onto a football field.
But right as his college career came to a peak, he seemingly disappeared in the NFL.
I wanted to be a Hall of Famer, you know what I mean? I wanted to be a Pro Bowler, I wanted to be all those things, but it didn't happen for me.
But how did Tavon's career take such a mysterious turn? In order to understand, we should talk about where it all started. About 3 hours east of West Virginia, on a small strip of grass in West Baltimore, the Tavon Wesley Austin called the middle piece.
It ain't wide at all, you know what I mean? It's long, but it ain't wide at all, you feel what I'm saying? Then we got the hill. Cars can go one way, cars go this way, one way, cars go this way, field in the middle. You ain't got that much room. You can hit out of bounds, you can get hit into the car, you can hit into the street.
This is where Tavon began to develop his skills as a football player, and because of his small stature, he had to play differently.
Because like I say, I was the smallest guy, but at the same time, the middle part was only but so big. You gotta make a miss. Favorite game ever to play was throw up tackle. One person got the ball, and you for yourself, and maneuver and get through that touchdown. So that's where I think a lot of my skill came from, a lot of my toughness.
Off the field, Tavon had to navigate the tough city he grew up in a similar fashion, maneuvering and being on point with all his actions. From an early age, he showed signs of being special. Small in stature but incredibly fast, he was singularly focused on one goal, making the NFL. His mother, Kathy Green, said, "He never let anybody forget. He'd always say, 'I'm going to the NFL. Did you forget? I'm going to the NFL.'" His mother was central to his upbringing, providing him with love, discipline, and the support necessary to avoid the distractions that often pulled young men in the wrong direction. Kathy's strong influence on Tavon's life gave him a sense of accountability, a trait he carried throughout his football career. With older cousins who shared his passion for football, he trained and practiced with them religiously, despite being 12 years younger. Those early competitions would sharpen his skills and ignite a love for the game that became his focus. In addition to football, Tavon had a deep love for basketball and track, both of which showcased his athleticism. In 2005, as Austin entered high school, he was already becoming known around the city as an exceptional football and basketball player. Attending Dunbar High School, it didn't take long for him to stand out as one of the most electrifying athletes in Maryland. Playing running back for the Poets, Tavon became a star. His speed became stuff of legends in Baltimore. On Friday nights, crowds would pack the stands just to see what Tavon would do next. As a freshman, Tavon would rush for over 1,000 yards, but that was just the beginning for him. In each of the next 3 seasons, he rushed for at least 2,000 yards, leading his team to 3 consecutive Class 1A state championships. In his senior year, he racked up 2,660 rushing yards on 218 carries, scored 34 touchdowns, and returned just 12 punts for 446 yards and 2 touchdowns. His performances on the field weren't just impressive, they were record-breaking. Tavon rushed for an astonishing 7,962 yards during his high school career, setting Maryland state records for total offensive yards, 9,258, touchdowns, 123, and career points, 790. All of these records still stand to this day. He would win 2 Maryland Offensive Player of the Year awards and be named First Team All-State. His abilities on the field earned him the nickname The Blur from local fans and sports writers. He was often described as a player who could turn a routine handoff into a 70-yard touchdown in the blink of an eye. It was plays like these that solidified his status as one of the most exciting high school players in the country. But what made him special wasn't just his athleticism, it was his toughness. Despite his size, standing at just 5'8" and weighing 175 pounds during his high school years, Tavon never shied away from contact. Coaches and teammates praised him for his fearless attitude and his ability to get back up after taking hard hits. Off the field, Tavon was known as a quiet, humble individual. His teammates described him as someone who let his play do the talk. Despite his fame in Baltimore, Tavon stayed grounded, often crediting his coaches, family, and teammates for his success. As colleges began to take notice of Tavon's talent, he found himself receiving offers from programs across the country. Schools like Maryland, Michigan, Georgia, Nebraska, and West Virginia were interested. His mother and high school coach at Dunbar, Lawrence Smith, played pivotal roles in guiding him through the recruiting process. Tavon said, My mother told me that she wanted me to go where I fit in and felt comfortable. She wanted to make sure I have people I can go to if anything happens and who care about my education and don't just use me for football. Tavon felt a special connection to West Virginia.
I kind of knew I love West Virginia because it kind of fit my mold to who I was, my mentality, the type of guy I am, the way I played.
Tavon arrived at West Virginia University in 2009, carrying the weight of high expectations after his legendary high school career at Dunbar. The Mountaineers under head coach Bill Stewart saw Tavon's potential immediately. However, they believed his potential was higher at a different position. Tavon was moved from running back to wide receiver during his freshman season and also recognized his ability to contribute on special teams as well.
Probably the best switch that I made for my career.
In his freshman season, Tavon was used sparingly, but it was clear he was a star in the making. Appearing in all 13 games, he contributed as a kick returner and receiver, hauling in 15 catches for 151 yards and a touchdown and rushing for another. While the numbers were modest, his flashes of brilliance gave fans a glimpse of what was to come. His abilities to make defenders miss in tight spaces and accelerate to top speed in a split second hinted at the game-breaking talent he possessed. After a freshman season spent largely learning the ropes, Austin's sophomore year saw him take an expanded role. Austin quickly established himself as a reliable playmaker, leading the team in receptions with 58 catches for 787 yards and 8 touchdowns. These numbers underscored his importance to the offense and showcased his ability to create plays in tight spaces. Tavon's signature was his ability to turn a short pass into long gains, leaving defenders grasping at air while he employed the same moves he had learned on the middle ground growing up. His speed was his most lethal weapon. His vision and ability to anticipate defenders' moves made him even more dangerous. Austin didn't just contribute as a receiver, he also made waves on special teams. His work as a kick returner was nothing short of spectacular. He amassed 938 return yards and scored 2 touchdowns, one of which was a dazzling 96-yard return that displayed his straight-line speed and his ability to evade tacklers. Special teams were where Tavon's explosiveness shined brightest, as he had the innate ability to shift momentum in a single play. This dual threat as a receiver and returner earned Austin his first major accolade, a first-team All-Big East selection as a kick returner. It was clear that West Virginia had an emerging game-changer in Austin, and while the Mountaineers' offense as a whole continued to find its identity, Tavon was its most dynamic weapon. At the same time, future NFL quarterback Geno Smith was beginning to break out in his own right. The chemistry between Smith and Austin had developed throughout the season, and their connection was only growing.
Here comes Geno, fading back. Here comes Austin.
Prior to Tavon's junior season, head coach Bill Stewart had announced his resignation and was replaced by Dana Holgorsen. Holgorsen had served as Oklahoma State's offensive coordinator the previous season and brought his signature air raid offense. The system was tailored for Tavon's skill set, emphasizing quick passes, open space, and opportunities for playmakers to thrive. Austin and Geno flourished in the new scheme, elevating their game to another level during the 2011 season. The numbers speak for themselves. Tavon set a single-season school record with 101 receptions for 1,186 yards and 8 touchdowns. His performance earned him his first All-American honors for the 2011 season, as well as Big East Special Teams Player of the Year. He was no longer just a complementary piece of the offense. He was its centerpiece. Every game plan revolved around finding ways to get the ball into Tavon's hands, and he responded with game-breaking performances week after week. Whether it was catching a quick slant and turning into a 50-yard gain or making defenders miss on screen passes, Tavon was a constant nightmare for opposing defenses. His impact wasn't limited to offense. Tavon continued to excel on special teams, leading the nation in all-purpose yardage with an average of 198 yards per game. His ability to contribute in multiple phases of the game made him one of the most versatile players in college football. Whether it was returning kicks, running reverses, or catching passes, Tavon would find ways to impact the game. One of the defining moments of his junior season came in the 2012 Orange Bowl against Clemson.
First BCS bowl game where it's a significant margin. I think Clemson beats West Virginia and destroys them.
The Mountaineers entered the game as 3-point underdogs, but Tavon and the West Virginia offense delivered a performance for the ages. The Mountaineers scored an NCAA record 70 points in the game, demolishing Clemson 70-33. Tavon was instrumental in the blowout victory, recording 11 receptions for 117 yards and 4 touchdowns. His ability to exploit the Tigers' secondary created opportunities for explosive plays that broke the game open. That night, Tavon was the star of the show, and his performance cemented his reputation as one of the most dynamic players in the nation. By his senior season in 2012, Tavon Austin had fully established himself as one of college football's elite players. He was no longer just a receiver. He was a weapon that could be deployed anywhere on the field. Dana Holgorsen recognized this and began using Tavon in even more creative ways. While he still operated as the team's primary slot receiver, Tavon also took a significant role in the running game. It was a move that proved to be game-changing. In his senior campaign, Tavon recorded 114 receptions for 1,289 yards and 12 touchdowns, once again leading the team in receiving. But it was his contributions in the running game that set his season apart.
It would be hard to try to tackle this guy in the phone booth.
He carried the ball 72 times for 643 yards and 3 touchdowns, showcasing his ability to break long runs and find the end zone. Tavon's versatility was unmatched. He could beat defenses as a receiver, a runner, or a returner, making him a matchup nightmare. His highlights from the season became legendary among fans of football all around. Only One was uploaded by Duggity Dog in March of 2013 and has amassed over 24 million views on YouTube and became synonymous with the Kid Ink song. I reached out to Doug on Twitter to find out what his favorite play was, and he told me this Tavon run against TCU. The peak of his senior year and perhaps his entire college career came on November 17, 2012 in a game against the Oklahoma Sooners. In what is widely regarded as one of the greatest individual performances in NCAA history, Tavon put on a show for the ages. He totaled 572 all-purpose yards, including 344 rushing yards on 21 carries, 82 receiving yards, and 146 return yards. His 344 rushing yards set a school single-game record, and his 572 all-purpose yards were the second highest total in NCAA history. The game itself was a thrilling 50-49 loss, but Tavon's performance overshadowed the outcome. Time and time again, he torched Oklahoma's defense, breaking tackles, making defenders miss, and outrunning everyone on his way to the end zone. It was the type of performance that left fans, analysts, and even opposing players in awe. Tavon's ability to dominate in every phase of the game was on full display, and it was a testament to his rare talent. He earned his second first-team All-American honors during the 2012 season, as well as the Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year. By the time his college career ended, he had solidified his place as one of the greatest players in West Virginia University history. He left as the school's all-time leader in receptions, receiving yards, and all-purpose yards. His accolades included 2 first-team All-American selections, multiple conference honors, and a reputation as one of the most dynamic players to ever step on a college football field. His time at West Virginia was more than just about stats. It was about the moments that defined his entire career. Whether it was his record-breaking performance at Oklahoma, his show-stopping plays in the Orange Bowl, or his consistent ability to turn routine plays into highlights, Tavon left an incredible mark on college football. His legacy isn't just one of numbers, it's one of excitement, creativity, and unmatched versatility. But this is where our story begins to take a turn for Tavon. By the time he declared for the NFL draft in 2013, he was considered one of the most dynamic and electrifying prospects in the class. Tavon's rare combination of speed, agility, and versatility had scouts buzzing, and his jaw-dropping performances at West Virginia placed him firmly in the spotlight. Yet, as with any prospect, there were questions and debates about how his skill set would translate to the NFL. His tape showed a player capable of turning even the most routine play into an explosive highlight. Scouts raved about his elite speed and his ability to change directions without losing momentum. His lateral quickness and balance made him nearly impossible to take down in the open field. In short, Tavon was a human highlight reel, and teams salivated at the thought of what he could contribute to their offense. But for all the praise he received, there were also questions. At just 5'8" and 174 pounds, Austin didn't fit the traditional mold of an NFL receiver. His small frame raised concerns about his durability, especially given the physicality of the NFL. Scouts wondered if he could withstand the punishment of a full NFL season. Some questioned whether he would be able to consistently beat press coverage against bigger, stronger cornerbacks. Austin's versatility was one of his greatest strengths. At West Virginia, he had proven he could play any position for the offense. His ability to line up all over the field gave offensive coordinators endless possibilities. But this also presented its own challenges. Was he a true slot receiver? Could he succeed as a full-time running back? Or would he be limited to just gadget plays and special teams? These uncertainties left some teams hesitant, as they weren't sure how to maximize his potential with the traditional offense. Austin quieted some of these concerns during the NFL Combine, where he put on a show that solidified his status as a first-round prospect. He ran a blistering 4.3 440, confirming that his game-breaking speed wasn't just evident on tape. Comparisons were made to other small, speedy players who had succeeded in the NFL, like Darren Sproles and Percy Harvin. But there were also reminders of players who had struggled to make the transition. Analysts consistently projected him as a mid to late first round pick, with several teams rumored to be interested in his services. The buzz surrounding Austin wasn't just about his ability to make plays. It was about his potential to redefine how offenses used players with his unique skill set. On draft night, the St. Louis Rams made it clear how much they valued his talent.
Rams trade up for the 8th pick, get a guy that a lot of people thought was the most exciting, maybe the best, most talented player in the draft with Tavon Austin.
Originally holding the 16th overall pick, the Rams traded up with the Buffalo Bills to select Austin at 8th overall, making him the first wide receiver taken in the 2013 draft. The move was a bold one, as the Rams gave up their first, second, third, and a 7th round pick to secure Austin. However, it was a testament to how highly they regarded him and their belief that he could be the centerpiece of their offense. The Rams envisioned Austin as the type of player who could transform their stagnant offense. At the time, St. Louis was in desperate need of playmakers, and Austin's versatility seemed like the perfect fit. Head coach Jeff Fisher spoke glowingly about Austin's potential, emphasizing their plans to use him in a variety of roles.
This offense has been redesigned to make sure that he gets touches of the football. He's not missed a day, and he's running extra after practice, and he looked pretty good.
Austin entered his rookie season with immense hype and pressure. The Rams' offense, led by quarterback Sam Bradford, lacked weapons, and Austin was expected to fill that void immediately. Early on, there were flashes of the player who had taken college football by storm. In Week 10 against the Indianapolis Colts, Austin had a breakout performance, scoring 3 touchdowns, including a dazzling 98-yard punt return and 2 long receptions. He finished the game with 314 all-purpose yards, showing the world what he was capable of at his peak. But even in his best moments, cracks in the foundation began to show. While Austin's speed and elusiveness were undeniable, the Rams struggled to use him effectively. Head coach Jeff Fisher and offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer often deployed Austin in gadget plays and misdirection schemes, but these didn't translate into consistent production. Opposing defenses, faster and more disciplined than those that Austin faced in college, quickly adjusted to his role. His size and inability to beat press coverage became glaring issues, and the lack of creativity in the Rams' offense didn't help. He would finish his rookie season with 418 receiving yards, 151 rushing yards, and 6 total touchdowns. These numbers were far below the expectations for a top 10 pick. While there were highlights, the overarching story of his rookie year was one of unfilled potential. Hopes were high for a sophomore resurgence in the 2014 season, but Austin's second year only deepened the questions about his role and effectiveness. The Rams' offense continued to struggle, particularly after Sam Bradford suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason. Without a reliable quarterback, Austin's opportunities to make an impact diminished further. Used primarily in short yardage plays like bubble screens and reverses, Austin's ability to stretch the field was never fully utilized. Defensive coordinators often keyed in on him, knowing the Rams would try to manufacture touches for their undersized playmaker. As a result, his production remained underwhelming. He recorded just 242 receiving yards with no receiving touchdowns and 224 rushing yards with only 2 touchdowns. The lack of consistency in his usage, combined with the team's overall offensive struggles, began to overshadow his potential. By the end of his second season, whispers began to circulate. Had the Rams miscalculated by trading up to draft Austin? The 2015 season, however, brought some optimism as Austin delivered his best all-around performance with the Rams. Head coach Jeff Fisher and new offensive coordinator Frank Signett Jr. made a more concerted effort to get Austin involved in the offense. He was used both as a receiver and a running back, finishing the season with 473 receiving yards, 434 rushing yards, and 9 total touchdowns, his highest output in the NFL to that point. Austin's versatility was on full display in several games. In Week 4 against the Arizona Cardinals, he caught 6 passes for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, reminding fans of the player who had dominated at West Virginia. His ability to contribute in multiple ways made him a valuable asset in spurts, but inconsistency remained a reoccurring theme. While he had standout performances, there were still long stretches where Austin was a non-factor, and questions about his ability to develop as a true receiver persisted. Believing that Austin was still capable of becoming a star, the Rams doubled down on their investment ahead of the 2016 season. They signed him to a 4-year, $42 million contract extension, a move that shocked many around the league given his inconsistent production. The deal included $30 million in guaranteed money, making Austin one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL at the time. Unfortunately, the 2016 season didn't justify the Rams' gamble. While Austin saw an increase in touches, his production remained underwhelming. He recorded 509 receiving yards, 159 rushing yards, and 4 total touchdowns. The Rams' offense, now led by quarterback Jared Goff after another disappointing season under Case Keenum, remained one of the worst in the league. Goff's inexperience and the lack of a cohesive offensive scheme further limited Austin's opportunities. Criticism of Austin reached a fever pitch. Fans and analysts alike questioned why the Rams had invested so heavily in a player who had yet to produce like a true first-round pick. The once bright promise of Austin's career was beginning to fade, and the narrative around him shifted from potential to missed opportunities. By 2017, the Rams had undergone significant changes.
Sean McVay is the new head coach of the LA Rams.
Sean McVay took over as head coach, bringing a modern, innovative offense that revitalized the careers of several players. Just not Tavon Austin. McVay's system prioritized precise route running and efficiency, qualities that didn't align with Austin's skill set. As a result, his role diminished drastically. He recorded just 13 receptions for 47 yards that season, a stark contrast to the expectations that once surrounded him. While Austin continued to contribute as a runner, finishing with 270 rushing yards, his lack of development as a receiver was impossible to ignore. The Rams' offense flourished under McVay, with players like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Todd Gurley becoming the focal points. Austin, once seen as the cornerstone of the franchise, had become an afterthought.
I got traded to Dallas.
At the end of the 2017 season, the Rams traded Austin to the Dallas Cowboys for a 6th-round pick, signaling the end of his time in Los Angeles. What had begun with such promise, a bold trade-up to select him 8th overall in hopes of transforming the Rams' offense, ended with a quiet departure. Austin's career with the Rams was a story of glimpses and flashes, but ultimately one of unmet expectations.
It was tough a lot. Just knowing all the blood and sweat and tears I put in St. Louis and how I really fought. And, St. Louis loved me. The Rams loved me regardless.
Tavon arrived in Dallas and began to prepare for his opportunity with the Cowboys, possibly the perfect chance to regain his former glory. Dallas hoped that Austin's speed and versatility could inject a new dynamic into their offense, complementing quarterback Dak Prescott, star running back Ezekiel Elliott, and their established core. From the outset, the Cowboys made it clear that Austin wasn't coming in as the centerpiece of the offense. Instead, he was viewed as a utility player, a situational weapon who could stretch the field and contribute in specialized roles. This was a far cry from the lofty expectations placed on him in St. Louis, but it offered Austin a chance to carve out a niche and make meaningful contributions without the weight of being a top draft pick. Austin made an immediate impact in Week 2 against the New York Giants. On the Cowboys' 3rd play from scrimmage, Prescott hit Austin on a deep pass for a 64-yard touchdown. The play reminded everyone of the speed and explosiveness that once had made him a household name. It was the kind of game-breaking ability the Cowboys had hoped to unlock when they brought him in, but that moment proved to be the exception rather than the rule. Austin struggled to find consistency in Dallas's offense, which was heavily reliant on Elliott's running game and a methodical passing attack. His touches were limited, and while he occasionally flashed his trademark elusiveness, his overall productions remained modest. A groin injury suffered during Week 6 sidelined him for several weeks, further limiting his ability to establish a rhythm. Austin finished the 2018 season with just 8 receptions for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 55 rushing yards on 6 carries. Though he contributed as a punt returner, his impact was minimal, and it was clear that the Cowboys didn't view him as a core piece of their offense.
Do I think he can resurrect himself? Yes, I do.
Austin returned to the Cowboys for the 2019 season, but his role in the offense continued to diminish. With the emergence of young wide receivers like Michael Gallup and the addition of Pro Bowl veteran Amari Cooper, the Cowboys' passing attack became more focused on traditional receiving targets. Austin, once viewed as a potential game changer, was relegated to a rotational role. He appeared in 13 games, but managed just 13 receptions for 177 yards and 1 touchdown. His lone score of the season came in a blowout win over the Washington Redskins in Week 17. A game that held little significance for Dallas as their playoff hopes had already been dashed. While Austin continued to contribute as a punt returner, averaging 4.7 yards per return, his impact was far from what the Cowboys had envisioned when they traded for him. As the season progressed, it became clear that Austin was no longer the player teams had feared in college. His speed, while still impressive, wasn't enough to overcome his limited route tree and struggles against physical coverage. Defensive coordinators didn't need to account for him in the same way, and his touches became more sporadic as the Cowboys' offense leaned on other weapons. The Cowboys chose not to re-sign Austin following the 2019 season, bringing his 2-year stint in Dallas to an end. His time with the Cowboys mirrored his late years with the Rams, flashes of brilliance overshadowed by long stretches of mediocrity. While he occasionally provided moments that reminded fans of his potential, those moments were fleeting, and the role he played was ultimately peripheral. In 2020, Tavon joined the Green Bay Packers in the middle of the season, signing in December to add depth to their receiver and return corps. The Packers, led by MVP Aaron Rodgers, were a powerhouse team with Super Bowl aspirations, and Tavon was brought in as a utility player who could contribute in limited roles. Unfortunately, his time in Green Bay was uneventful. Austin appeared in just 4 games, recording 5 punt returns for 14 yards and failing to make a single reception. With the Packers boasting a strong receiving group, including Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, there's little room for Austin to carve out a significant role. Despite the team's success, Austin's contributions were minimal, and he was not retained after the season. In the offseason, Austin signed with the San Francisco 49ers, hoping for a fresh start. However, his time in San Francisco never truly began. A knee injury during training camp landed him on the injury reserve, and he was eventually released before the regular season started. In 2021, Austin signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars, joining the team in the midst of a rebuild under rookie quarterback Trevor Lawrence and controversial head coach Urban Meyer. The Jaguars were a far cry from the playoff contending teams Austin had briefly been part of, but they offered him something he desperately needed: playing time. Austin appeared in 13 games for the Jaguars, making his most significant contributions in years. He recorded 24 receptions for 213 yards and 1 touchdown, along with the limited work as a returner. His lone touchdown of the season came in Week 12 against the Atlanta Falcons, a brief moment of success in an otherwise forgettable year for the Jaguars, who finished with the league worst 3-14 record. While the numbers in Jacksonville were modest, they represented a minor resurgence for a player whose career seemed to be fading. Austin showed flashes of his former self, but those moments were few and far between. His speed, once his defining trait, had lost some of its edge, and his inability to consistently impact games remained a glaring issue. In 2022, Tavon signed with the Buffalo Bills, joining a team widely regarded as one of the best in the NFL. The Bills, led by superstar quarterback Josh Allen, were a high-powered offensive unit, and Austin's signing generated a small spark of hope that he could find a niche role in their attack. However, Austin's time in Buffalo was short-lived. After spending training camp and a part of the preseason with the team, he was released before the start of the regular season. Later in the year, he signed with the Bills practice squad, but never appeared in a game for Buffalo. By this point, Tavon Austin's NFL journey seemed to be nearing its end. In August of 2024, Austin officially announced his retirement from professional football. The announcement marked the end of a 10-year NFL career that had taken him from being the 8th overall pick in the draft to a journeyman player struggling to find his role. For fans who followed his college career, it was a bittersweet moment, a reminder of the heights he had reached at West Virginia and the unfulfilled promises of his time in the NFL. Austin reflected on his journey with gratitude, thanking teams, coaches, and fans who had supported him along the way. In interviews, he spoke candidly about the challenges of transitioning from college to the NFL, the pressures of being a high draft pick, and the lessons he had learned throughout his career.
For me, it was a little different. I struggled in the beginning. When I first got in the league, I always was one of the most talented in this world. If I would have had a little bit more different coaching to be a receiver, you got to be technical sound. I didn't really get that type of coaching as a receiver, so I got around a coach named Sanjay Lau, and he developed me to a receiver that I wish I would have had when I was a rookie. I feel like my career would have been so much better.
Despite the ups and downs, Austin maintained pride in what he had accomplished, emphasizing that he had always given his best effort. Tavon's legacy extends far beyond the numbers in the stat sheet. While his NFL career didn't reach the heights many had envisioned, his influence on the game is undeniable. For an entire generation of young players, Tavon's highlight reels were a source of inspiration. His jaw-dropping cuts, breakaway speed, and ability to turn any play into a touchdown made him a cultural phenomenon during his college years. Even today, NFL players and fans alike cite Tavon Austin as one of the reasons they fell in love with football. His electrifying runs and fearless style of play reminded everyone of the pure joy and excitement the sport can bring. Tavon may not have rewritten the NFL record books, but he left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who dreamed of doing the impossible. One cut, one spin, and one sprint to the end zone at a time. Johnny Manziel highlighted this on his podcast with Austin after his retirement.
Whose highlights did you watch most on YouTube growing up? Probably Tavon Austin.
Tavon Austin.
Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin. By far. Greatest high school highlight tape ever created, ever.
Tavon Austin, for sure. Tavon Austin.
Tavon Austin. Thomas, Patrick Peterson, and Tavon Austin.
Oh, man.
What is your favorite Tavon Austin highlight? Let me know in the comments below.